discussion is all about metabolic dysfunction. It is the number one cause of inflammation and illness in our bodies, but it is not diagnosed by most doctors. They don't look for it because, again, for those of you that know me, doctors only look for pathology and not states of dysfunction within the body. And so metabolic dysfunction is something that 86% of the population struggles with, but largely only a third of them are diagnosed with metabolic disorders. Okay. So if you look around, everyone around you is really struggling with it. And once you get to that place where you have a metabolic dysfunction, your body kind of wants to go back there, right? So you can do all these things to keep it here, but your body's going to want to kind of keep going back, right? It becomes its sort of set point. So this is why really being mindful of your diet and your lifestyle to keep it on the other side is so important. Now, metabolic dysfunction is really just a name for a bunch of things that start to happen within the body that tell us that the body's not functioning optimally. So if you think about your blood work, everyone knows I'm into blood work. The first thing you want to look at is cholesterol levels. If your cholesterol levels are high, so I would say above 210, 220, that's a sign that your body has inflammation. Okay. Now, too low is not good either because we need cholesterol for hormones and for brain function and all of that. So somewhere around 180 to 210 is optimal for cholesterol. Okay. Now, with metabolic dysfunction as well, if your triglycerides are high, then that's a good sign that you may have metabolic dysfunction as well. What I like to look at is ratios. So I want my triglycerides to be half of my cholesterol. So if my cholesterol is 210 or 200, I'm going to make the math simple on me, then I want my triglycerides to be at 100. Okay. Now, HDL should be half of triglycerides. HDL is your good cholesterol. That should be half of your triglycerides. If it's lower than that, then your body doesn't have enough of the good fats that it needs. And that's also a sign of metabolic dysfunction. So we want HDL to be half or better. So generally between 50 to 80 is a good number for HDL. Okay. So high cholesterol is a good indicator. High triglycerides is a good indicator of metabolic dysfunction. Then we're also going to look at our ALT and AST markers. These are liver markers on your lab work. So if you have lab work by you, take a look at them. Ideally, we want them to be around 20. So I like between 15 and 20. If those two are above 22, either one, then that's a sign that your liver is overburdened. Okay, so that's another sign of metabolic dysfunction. Glucose is another sign of metabolic dysfunction. And most doctors will run glucose pretty regularly. And that should be a fasting number. And you want it to be between 85 and 88. A lot of doctors will tell you it's normal at 99, 97. Okay. So if it's above 85 or 88, you have problems with blood sugar regulation. And that, for those of you that are in here for tinnitus, that's going to be your main cause of tinnitus is blood sugar dysregulation. Okay. So that's one. And then your A1C, your HbA1c, which is your insulin number. Ideally, we want that at about 4.6. Most doctors think it's normal up to 5.3 or 5.6. That's what we consider in the functional world pre-diabetic. Okay. So those are all good indicators that you have metabolic dysfunction. So when our metabolic system, which is responsible for just about every system in the body, when it's not working well, you're going to have neurological problems. You're going to have cardiovascular problems. You're going to have respiratory problems. You're going to struggle with your liver and your kidneys. So if you have an issue like gout or fluid retention, it all comes back to a metabolic function. Okay. Now, if you have this underlying inflammation, it's also going to make you more prone to other illnesses. So be it mold or toxicity in the environment, because now your body is fighting two totally separate things and it's beat down by both of them. So this is why understanding and fixing the metabolic health is so critical. So again, our cardiovascular issue is impacted by it. Metabolic dysfunction will give you high blood pressure. So we want to get that addressed so that you don't have high blood pressure. It'll give you cardiovascular disease, might give you clotting, atherosclerosis, any types of these things where there's clotting or any problems in the arteries at all. Okay. Neurologically, when we're looking at metabolic dysfunctions, then we're looking at neuropathy. Maybe you have humming, buzzing, even tingling feelings in your extremities. This can all be part of a metabolic issue as well. Brain fog. Like I said, your kidneys can be a little overburdened. So maybe you're urinating too much. You're up all night going to the bathroom. All of this kind of factors in there. So what causes metabolic dysfunctions? Pretty simple. Number one, it's going to be diet. Okay, so processed food is the biggest culprit. Processed food really isn't food. It's all synthetic, so our bodies can't process it properly. The added vitamins and minerals in there are also synthetic, so the body can't process those either. So it's a toxic environment that we're ingesting into the body, which is causing issues. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay. So what we're ingesting. So processed food is going to be number one. High sugar, high carbohydrate. So a lot of people think fruit is great for you. Well, some fruit may not be as bad, but fruit overall is not a great option anymore. It's been so hybridized that it's not in its natural form like it was 50 years ago. Think about watermelon and strawberries. They never used to be as sweet as they are today. So the sugar and fructose content within the fruit that we're eating today will create that metabolic dysfunction. It's going to also give rise to more yeast and candida problems within the body. So if you're struggling with mold, GI issues at all, it's going to exacerbate that. So if you're eating fruit, you always want to go towards more low glycemic, any of the berries, strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, things like that. Avoid the delicious fruit like pineapple and save that for when you go to Hawaii and you just let go. So no pineapple, no bananas, no grapes, watermelon, any of that. While there are health benefits, you can get all those health benefits from other vegetables that aren't going to be detrimental to your health.
Gotcha.
And I'm not saying that you can't splurge once in a while, but I've been known to eat 10 bananas at a time or douse them in chocolate syrup, right? And that's just it's a recipe for disaster there.
Yeah.
So we've got the fruit there. That's an issue. We're not eating enough fiber. Okay. So a lot of people maybe they go towards a vegetarian diet, which can be short-term, can be great. But we need protein. Protein helps to blunt some of the responses within the body, and it helps to fuel the metabolic processes. So we absolutely need protein, but carnivore on the far end of that is not giving us the fiber that we need to blunt the insulin responses. So we always need fiber. Fiber will give you a healthy digestive system. It'll help flush out your bowels so that you're moving toxins out of your body. Another cause of metabolic dysfunction would be those yeast and candida or underlying bacterial infections within the body, anything that just causes inflammation in general. These can be low-level infections, such as if you look at your blood work, and John, I don't know if you have yours in front of you.
I do.
There is a panel called CBC with differential, and that's your, it'll have like the white blood cell count. So it'll say like WBC and then RBC and hemoglobin and all these things. And then there'll be an area where it says neutrophils. Sometimes the doctors don't order it. Neutrophils is a sign of a bacterial infection. Neutrophils should be around 60%. If they're above 60%, you have an underlying bacterial infection that's causing inflammation. Lymphocytes is a marker for viral infections. That should be around 30%. If it's higher than that, you're struggling with a viral issue. Now, if your neutrophils and lymphocytes are close to a 1-to-1 ratio, then you have an autoimmune disorder. Okay. Then monocytes is the next one. That one is also a viral marker. Think mono, Epstein-Barr virus. So if it's above 7%, then you have an active Epstein-Barr likely, but an active viral infection within your body. And then the next two would be eosinophils and basophils. Those should be around 2% or lower. If they're higher, the first thing I think that may be causing metabolic dysfunction is food allergies or sensitivities. And if you've already modified your diet and those numbers are still high, then I'm thinking parasites. Okay, now we all have parasites. I do recommend parasite cleanses for everybody. But if that number is higher, like I've seen it on some where it's 12 or 14, you absolutely have to do a parasite cleanse. So these are things that can give other inflammation within the body that are going to affect how our liver's working. Alcohol. Alcohol is going to be a huge stressor for the liver. And if the liver's not working well, then the pancreas isn't working well. You get a metabolic dysfunction. So any amount of alcohol can actually cause metabolic dysfunction or lead to it. You may have heard the term non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's why. So alcohol is just so toxic to the body that it creates where fat just sits on top of the liver. Another issue is not ingesting healthy fats. Does anybody know what a healthy fat is? Bree, what's a healthy fat? Give me a couple of them.
We got avocado. Let's see, olive oil,
Yep.
avocado oil, coconut oil. What am I missing?
Grass-fed butter.
Yes, grass-fed butter, ghee.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then you can use MCT oil as well, which is a derivative of coconut oil. So these are good healthy oils, which the body can better utilize when we're taking in things like grapeseed oil, canola oil, vegetable oil. These are all really toxic and they clog up the arteries. They cause inflammation. They're the number one cause of oxidative damage or stress in the body and mitochondrial dysfunction. And then the body shuttles those fats to the liver and give you non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So you have alcoholic fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So that's why diet is so very important. The other piece to the puzzle, well, there's a couple more, is the timing of how often we eat. Most of us snack all day long. Snacking all day long is going to cause these rapid rises and drops in our blood sugar. And then this up and down releases excess insulin within the body that it can't use. Then it's almost like, think about a little kid screaming, mom, 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 all the time. You start to ignore it. So that's what happens when we have all this glucose in the body. The cells start to ignore it, and it doesn't accept it into the cell to be utilized as energy. So now the insulin is floating around, the glucose is floating around. You'll get liver dysfunction, and you'll get metabolic dysfunction from that. And then the last piece is toxin exposure, which we're all exposed to a ton of toxins. Probably the most prevalent and most damaging for all of us is glyphosate. Glyphosate, no matter what you do, is everywhere, and it destroys our gut. So even if you're buying organic, you can bet that your vegetables still have residuals of glyphosate on them. If you're spraying Roundup in the yard, or your neighbors are, you've got glyphosate. And it's the number one cause of leaky gut and digestive problems. But the gut is where everything starts as far as health within the body. So if the gut isn't working well, that's a problem. Other toxins that you can be exposed to would be EMFs and radiation, right? So if you're around the computer all day, if you have a lot of electrical interference around you, if you use the microwave, that emits a ton of electromagnetic waves. If you get a lot of dental scans, or you have MRIs done, all of these are radiation exposure to the body. Then we have other chemicals, from fracking chemicals, gasoline fumes that are out in the environment, xenoestrogens, which are in the plastics. These are estrogen mimickers, which block all of our hormone receptors, including the thyroid and insulin, and that just creates problems as well. So toxicity is a big, big problem, and one of the reasons why we develop metabolic dysfunctions. Questions on that? Can anyone think of where they may be exposed to toxins, or if there's any underlying inflammation or blood issues that you're noticing?
I got tons. I've had blood clots. I've had gout. Yeah, I've had, my cholesterol's always been high. I went off of cholesterol meds for a little while. It was up around 300. Easy. And I can't take statins because I get bad leg cramps and whatnot. So yeah, I have just about everything you mentioned.
And I'm glad you can't take statins, honestly. Statins haven't been proven to help at all lower the risk, but the side effects are astronomical with statins. And so if you remember, cholesterol is just a sign that there's inflammation in the body. So your doctors aren't checking to see why the cholesterol is high. Right. They just want to lower it, right? So all they're doing is lowering the symptom, but they're not addressing the root cause, which is the underlying inflammation. And that's what we want to do as far as reversing metabolic dysfunction or anything that's going wrong in the body. We want to get rid of that inflammation. Some inflammation is good, right? But too much of it becomes a bad stressor. So we always want to have some, in response to things. That's how we grow. It's how our body adapts and morphs to different things. But when it's chronic, then it is disease causing.
I'm sorry, you mentioned the lymphocytes? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking at mine are 35.
Okay.
So that's high.
So it's a little high. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Were any of the other markers high for you?
By their standards, no. And eosinophils
Uh-huh.
are 5.8.
Okay.
Basophils are 2.0.
Okay. Okay. So
So that's,
those are a little high. So let
yeah,
me ask you then, when you eat, do you notice, are you in tune with your body at all? Do you notice any distress after you eat?
yes.
Okay.
I just mentioned it today to my wife. I said, every time I eat, I get a stomach ache,
Okay.
or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So as we get older, we tend to lose the ability to produce bile acid.
mhm,
Vegetarian diets are not going to stimulate that bile acid production. Being chronically dehydrated will lower the amount of bile. Not chewing our food enough lowers the bile production.
mhm,
And that creates a lot of inflammation in the gut because now the food is coming in and it's not really being digested and it's being churned in there. And what it does is it sort of like abrades the digestive wall. The
gotcha.
digestive wall is only one cell thick. And so what I would recommend doing, John, is keeping track of what you're eating and what you're noticing.
Mhm,
What things are triggering this? Is it everything? Is it just some things? And that way, sometimes you can just remove some of those things that are the bigger offenders to
right.
begin to let your gut heal. Okay. And as you keep going through the program, you'll see that there's things that you can do that are all going to sort of mitigate that. You had mentioned gout. What was your doctor doing? Did they say for the gout to avoid meat?
Yeah, and they gave me some medication,
Okay.
COCH. I forget the. It just to and it did reduce the inflammation like the next day, but then I was reading the side effects from it, and it's a pretty
Right.
rough medication. So yeah,
Yeah.
meat,
Go ahead.
uh, meat, avoid beer. The typical.
Mm-hmm.
My what is it? The uriatic acid?
Uh-huh.
Is that what it's called? Uriatic? I
Yeah.
think it was 9.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because it should be about 7.4.
Yeah.
Um, so the reason they tell you to avoid meat is because if you're eating a very meat heavy diet, it's very acidic, but so is high sugar, high carb, bad fats. All of those things are acidic because of the
Mhm.
inflammation that they cause in the body. So it's not meat that causes it, but you need to have that meat balanced out with the fiber. Okay, that fiber in those veggies are alkaline and it balances out. So that's
Okay.
why I don't like a carnivore diet because it
Right.
creates acidity. Acidity is what leads to tumors and cancer and everything else. Too alkaline can be just as damaging, right? So we need to have a perfect balance in there. So some protein. And so if you have yeast problems, if you have mold problems, if you have gout, if you're too acidic, those things are going to flourish and grow and proliferate. If you're too alkaline, you're going to start to be very dried out. You're going to be thirsty all the time. It's going to be almost similar symptoms, but just kind of, on the other end of the spectrum. Now, drinking alkaline water isn't an answer because it doesn't do anything. Your body will maintain its own pH balance. You
Right.
can't just take alkaline water and think that's going to magically make it all go away. So when it comes to the gout, that's going to be things like supporting the liver, getting
Mhm.
rid of those bad fats and toxins, because all that gets filtered through the kidneys. And if the kidneys are stressed, it can't regulate the pH balance. Okay. And that's another factor when it comes to tinnitus and metabolic dysfunction as well. So we'll get into that in another call. Now, how can you best mitigate or resolve some metabolic dysfunctions at home? Well, first is to clean up your diet. And I know it's easier said than done, but diet is the number one piece to improving the state of your metabolic health. So diabetes is just one facet of a metabolic dysfunction. You could be insulin resistant and not have diabetes, which is equally as bad as diabetes. You could just have metabolic dysfunction, and the doctors don't think much of it. They just put you on meds for each of the different things that are going wrong in your body. Diabetes is more where you start to have the bigger swings in blood sugar. You start to have the neuropathy, things like that. It's just how your body is processing that disorder or dealing with it. But they're all three sides of the same coin, basically. So insulin resistance, diabetes, and metabolic dysfunction. Other things that might give you a sign of metabolic dysfunction is belly fat. If you have cherry angiomas, those little red dots on your skin that pop up, that's a sign of metabolic dysfunction. A dowager's hump, darkening skin around the joints, all of that is sign of metabolic dysfunction as well. So we want to clean up the diet, eliminate all processed foods. Okay, as much as you can. If possible, I know it's expensive, try and choose organic so that you're minimizing the GMOs and the pesticides and herbicides that are coming into your body. Throw out all of the toxic seed oils and cook with just good, healthy oils. That's going to go a long way. I don't cook with olive oil because it has a low smoke point, but you can cook with all the other good, healthy oils. Try and minimize the exposure of toxins coming into your world. So if you're using normal cleaning ingredients like Tilex or bleach, all of these are toxic to the body. Minimize it. Look for more natural things like vinegar, baking soda. All of that can be just as effective cleaning. Some good quality essential oils without all the toxic side effects. For women, if you're using makeup, choose a non-toxic product that isn't going to be an estrogen disruptor. A lot of them have phthalates or phthalates and sulfites and all of these different chemicals, benzenes, and that just get absorbed right into the skin. And then you want to focus on gut health. And so you want to, again, chew your food. Bree knows I'm big on this. Chew your food 20 or 30 times before you swallow. That's going to give you more bile acid production. It's going to better make those minerals and vitamins that you're digesting get absorbed better into the body. Don't drink with your meals so it doesn't dilute the bile acid production. Okay. But otherwise during the day, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. And then there's a lot of herbs that you can take to support your liver and your kidneys. So you might find things like milk thistle or golden seal, berberine. All of these are very, very helpful for regulating blood sugar swings, helping to cleanse out the liver so that it doesn't become so overburdened with toxins. Okay. I know that was a lot. Kelly, you're quiet over there. Do you have questions?
No, I'm good. I'm listening and taking notes.
All right. John, what questions do you have?
I was just trying to think. I have so many things going on. It's hard to pick one first, you know. Definitely the I've been trying to use the rule no box or bag, eating anything from a box or a bag. I'm not a big fruit guy. But I do snack once in a while, you know, if it's in the house. That's my problem. And my wife cooks with olive oil, and she also uses avocado oil for the higher flash point.
Good.
If she's like cooking, you know, steak in the skillet or you know, that type of thing. Yeah, I was trying to think of anything else. I mean, I've really cleaned up a lot of stuff. I don't use sunscreen anymore because I just feel like it's getting sucked into my body. So I just kind of avoid the middle part of the day, the 11 to 2, you know.
Mhm.
I do go out, but I still, I just kind of take it easy.
Yeah.
Um,
Sun is important. It's healing. It gives us the vitamin D, which will reduce inflammation, especially now going into winter. You want to make sure that you're probably supplementing
right.
too. Because you guys are both in sort of the Midwest, Bree, probably not so much, but it's a little bit colder. It's not like you're in Florida. Sunscreen is extremely toxic, and actually what causes the most amount of sunburns is the toxic seed oils, because it causes like a rancidity. Think about that old episode of Seinfeld when he put the butter on, right? It went out. It's sort of like that, right? So you don't, it's causing an oxidation, almost like rusting,
Right.
when you get sunburned. So it's because of the oils that we're using. So when you start switching to healthier oils, you'll generally burn less.
Yeah, my doctor had me on Nexium for about 10 years, and that really messed some things up.
So you were having a lot of reflux then?
Oh, yeah.
So reflux is 99% of the time it's lack of stomach acid, not too much. And
yeah,
then they give you Nexium, which will reduce it even more, which then
right.
causes more digestive distress.
What about supplementing with something like ox bile, or is that worth it, or
I
okay.
do both digestive enzymes and ox bile
Okay.
with every meal. Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then I take apple cider vinegar throughout the day, because that's a bitter. It'll just start increasing my my digestive enzymes, but it also helps to regulate blood sugar as well.
Okay.
So absolutely. There really aren't I haven't seen any issues with ox bile on any brand, so they're all okay.
Okay.
Digestive enzymes, I like the betaine HCl. So anything that you can find that has that is great. So
Yeah, I bought the ox bile actually for my wife because she doesn't have a gallbladder. So I was going to start taking that too, just to see if it helped. And I definitely, going over what you were saying, I'm either insulin resistant or pre-diabetic, because my dad was diabetic and my sister's diabetic. So it does, I don't know if that's a term, runs in my family, or we're predisposed for it.
So you could be predisposed, but really what is more inherited is the lifestyle and the dietary habits.
That's a good point.
Right?
Never thought of that.
Mm-hmm. So when they say it's hereditary, maybe we turn our genes on and off based on the things that we eat and the lifestyle we live.
Mm.
So you can turn them off. I don't want to get Alzheimer's. My grandparents had diabetes and Alzheimer's. There's a reason that Alzheimer's is considered type 3 diabetes, because it is a metabolic disorder.
Okay.
I don't ever plan on going there.
No.
So I don't want anyone to have to
No.
kick me down the stairs, right? So for me, like, those are my whys, right? Like, why do I want to change? What do I want to improve about my life? And you probably read that already. I always talk about the whys. Why are you doing this?
Mhm.
You've got to go deeper. You got to get to the emotional piece. Why do you want something to change? What would be different in your life?
Right.
And that's where you're going to find the motivation to be successful with the changes you implement. Otherwise, it's out there, you know what you need to do, but it's so easy to fall off the wagon, right? But if you know your why, every time you go to reach for that French fry, or you go to have that bowl of ice cream, you're like, do I want that? No. And then you can put it down. It's a lot easier. Doesn't mean it happens all the time. I don't want you to have to live in a bubble, but make more conscious decisions about what you're putting into your body.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah, I hadn't had ice cream in probably 6 months, and last night my daughter brought some home and she said, "You got to try this, Dad." So I had a little bowl and I felt horrible afterward.
Mm-hmm.
I sick to my stomach and
Yep.
just terrible.
Yeah. When you start cleaning up everything in your life, it
Yeah.
doesn't take much for you to go, oh my gosh, that makes me feel horrendous. And then you realize how toxic it is to you, right? Like
Yeah.
my friends think I'm a fuddy-duddy now because I don't drink anymore. And I'm like, if I drink now, the pain that radiates through my body and I'm drunk in 2 minutes, I'm like, it's not worth it. It's just not.
Right. Yeah.
So, Bree, do you have questions?
Shockingly, no. I typically do, but right now I don't.
Awesome. So that's, really the big take home that I want for you guys to understand, that even though you may be struggling with all these other diagnosed health issues, ultimately the majority of them have metabolic dysfunction as their root cause. And what causes metabolic dysfunction? Inflammation in the body, right? When we start to address that inflammation and bring that down, that's when our body can use the resources it needs to heal the other things going on. But otherwise, it's like trying to throw water out of a sinking ship. It's not going to happen. You're just spending a ton of energy to do that and maintaining status quo, basically. Okay.
Yeah. Every time I go get blood work done, I get a cold sweat because I know something else is going to be wrong.
Yeah. And I've explained this to Bree, probably knows pretty well what I say, but when it comes to lab work, why I'm so into labs is number one, everyone's got them. I think there's a lot of functional tests out there that are ridiculously expensive, and most functional practitioners make all their money in their lab tests. And ultimately it doesn't change how I'm going to treat somebody. So I don't need to do a GI test to go, oh, you have overgrowth of a bacteria in your gut, because I'm going to address that bacteria the same way. Doesn't matter what bacteria it is.
Right.
But when we look at the labs, the normative data comes from the people that are coming in. Well, who goes to get lab work done? Generally, it's not people that are feeling well. So then the normative data is a sick population. Okay. So if you think about a bell curve, now doctors consider on the far ends of that bell curve as normal. In functional medicine, we consider it within the bell, right?
Gotcha.
So that's the normative data, not out here. And the population has gotten sicker and sicker over the years. So now that bell is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're just tightening it up so that we can find those areas of dysfunction before they become really difficult to reverse. Okay. Can you reverse just about everything? Yes, but it just takes longer to do that when you've been sicker for a longer period of time. Let me ask you, John, have you had any exposure to mold or anything like that in your house?
My house is pretty good. I've actually tested it with those little dishes.
Okay,
and,
good.
Years ago, our builder, there was problems with other houses and they sent a company in to test and we were okay. But my mother-in-law's house, which I spent some time in, definitely had mold in the basement, and that's where we slept. So I've been exposed to it for sure.
Okay.
Probably other areas too.
And most of us have. It's one of those things that so many of us don't realize that mold is so prevalent, especially with heating and air conditioning. We're keeping our houses closed, so there's no ventilation coming in to stop the mold.
Right.
My husband turned off the fans in the bathroom, and now we keep having mold, and he won't let me test because he knows it's going to cost him thousands of dollars. But we all do, right? And it's not just in those warm climates like Florida or, Georgia, Tennessee, those humid areas. Everywhere is prone to mold. Growing up, I think I told Kelly at one point, I lived in a house in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It was when I was in grad school at Bloomsburg, it was a dirt basement, right? It's like World War II house. I mean, it was just musty and everything. And, the pilot light was forever going out. And I was the only one who would go into the basement. I'm sure there was mold everywhere in that house. So the exposure for all of us is there. But if you're already in a state of inflammation, then your body can't handle that mold when it comes in, or it can't handle all those other toxins that come in. So things like multiple chemical sensitivity, where you start to notice that smells of smoke or perfume and things like that start to be a little noxious to you. Mm-hmm. It's because your body is already overburdened from all the toxins that it's dealing with. So, but all of those things cause metabolic dysfunction. So really everything in the world causes metabolic disorders.
Yeah, we're killing ourselves, but
we are, or the government is. I don't know what you want to say. But it can be helped, right? It's not easy. It's not overnight. But when you get that under control, everything else starts to fall into place. So it's being supportive to your body, your liver, your diet, right? Try and cut back on any snacking. And that's going to go a long way to improving your health overall.
Yeah, it's so hard to avoid the wireless stuff now. It's everywhere. We have a cell tower quarter of a mile from us, so I almost get a stronger signal from that as I do from an in-house router, It's,
mm-hmm.
it's just almost impossible, but you just do the best you can, I guess.
That's all you can do. I actually have a homeopathic remedy that I use that absorbs the EMFs and radiation and turns it into positive energy. So I've been doing some research on that. But like I said, if you can move your bed a little bit away from the wall, so things that they're not touching, that's going to reduce it significantly. Mm-hmm. Most people have their cell phone by their head on the nightstand when they go to bed. So good. I'm glad you don't. If you do, it's better to move it further away.
I don't even keep it in the bedroom. I even replaced my electrical alarm clock with a battery operated one. But, there's certain things. It's just so hard today. Everybody's so used to, modern appliances and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all break down more too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Think about the cars with all the sensors. Just get away from all that stuff. It is hard. And it's, like I said, you can't live in a bubble, but just be aware. So if you notice things flaring up, say, oh my gosh, have I been on the phone more? If I've been in a different environment, have I maybe been exposed to something that I otherwise wouldn't have? Mm-hmm. And then try and see what you can do to mitigate that some. The other things that you can do to help is to really help with the vagus nerve and autonomic nervous system, so that's your body's ability to respond to stress. So things like meditation, deep breathing exercises, yoga, humming, singing, all of that stimulates the vagus nerve, which goes from your brain to your gut. It's the longest nerve in the body. That will help to start to, quote, repair both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system so that it's in balance.
Okay.
And we'll dive into those more in other conversations, but questions. I know that was a lot in a short amount of time, but Kelly, you're good. Did you have any other questions or any questions?
What kind of digestive enzymes did you say?
So betaine, HCl, betaine, BETAINE, HCl. So as long as it has that, some people will use temporarily like some baking soda, which helps to alkalize and the digestive system. I have some great ones that I like to use. There's one, let me see. These are two. So one, this is Body Bio, and I have discounts if anyone wants them. So sodium butyrate is a short fatty acid that happens in the stomach from digestive enzymes. And then this is Gut Plus. I have a lot that I use, but these are great stuff. It has a lot of pre and postbiotics. This really, the sodium butyrate really helps with digestion. If you have magnesium issues and you need more magnesium, they have a magnesium one as well. So those are options for you, but let me know if you're having trouble finding anything. Generally, I don't recommend anything you can buy at the grocery store. I don't find that their products are very good or have any actual ingredients that they say they have. So you're spending a lot of money for basically wood pulp, which can be just as toxic. So sometimes those ingredients can be worse than not taking anything at all. So, but anyways, that's where I would start with. I would say for any health issues, we always want to start focusing on the gut first, because the gut is such a pivotal piece to the health of the rest of the body. When we focus there, then everything else will start to sort of fall into place.
Nice. Trying to think. I do have a lot of questions, but I don't want to. I can get off on a beaten path, but
That's
we
we have
time.
have our meeting for the tinnitus group next week.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into all those. Write them down so you don't forget them. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. Any other questions, Kelly, Bree, John, that you guys can think of?
Thank you. This